Hey, it's Bo, and I have a very special guest with me today and a good friend too, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And thank you for being here.
Oh,
It's
love it.
amazing
Yeah.
to have you. And every time I do an event, you guys, Joan comes to them because what I'm asking of you, and what I demand of you, is all that you got, and that takes a certain resolve. And to be resolved, you have to be healthy. Because so much of our work has to do with storytelling, I have Joan come to our storytelling events because there's this fine line, and I know a lot of you have asked this question of me. There's this fine line of what is storytelling, and then what is dumping, or what is therapy. And I'll just tell you straight up that storytelling is not dumping. Storytelling is therapeutic, but it's not therapy, correct, Joan?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Let's kind of start right there.
Okay.
Like you and I usually, this is where we meet, right here on this whole storytelling thing. And a lot of people, as you know, a lot of the exercises that I have them do is go to their lowest moment in storytelling instead of their highest or greatest moment.
Right, right.
Because that's usually a better story.
Absolutely.
Right? When you start at the lowest.
It's our struggle. It's how we grew and evolved.
Yeah. It's our story of struggle that makes that connects us to other human beings.
Yep.
But most of us want to hide that part, right? And not tell it. We'd rather tell, like, I'm on the top of Mount Everest. Look at me. I got a fancy car and a pretty wife. Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Instead of, I had nothing. And I started grinding away. Let's talk about that from the perspective of if somebody does start at their lowest moment.
Right.
The question I always get is, well, Bo, if I start there, how's my audience going to receive that? How am I going to get through that? Isn't it going to be too heavy for them? What would you say to somebody who said, Joan, look, I've got this heavy story, which most of us do, like a dark moment.
Right.
Where our life was kind of defined. If they come to you and they go, Joan, I got this heavy story and here's where it is. I don't think I can tell this to a business audience or to my audience. What would you say to them?
There's several things. First thing is you might not be telling it to every audience. So some things you may choose to leave out. Some things you'll choose to put in.
Yep.
And the key here is that you want to be telling the audience your story when you're no longer a victim of that story.
Oh, great. One rule we have, right?
Right.
No victims in storytelling.
Right.
Right? Good.
Because if I go into the story or go in to tell the story to an audience and I haven't worked out all my emotional stuff, my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, whatever it is, how I perceive myself from the experience that I went through, if I haven't worked that out, then I'm asking my audience to carry all the emotion from that.
Yeah, got it.
And
so now they're responsible for the story that you're the one telling.
Exactly.
Which you can't do to an audience.
Right.
Because they can't hear it, for one. They can't carry that weight for you. You've got to make it accessible to them.
Exactly. And we only make that accessible when we've made sense of it, when we've taken the time to kind of process through it, work through it, cry about it, whatever it takes, have conversations with other people about it.
Right.
But that we take the time to really make sense of what the experience, how it impacted us.
Yeah.
And the meaning it has for us. Then we can go into the audience and share either all the story and tell it from a place of strength.
Yeah.
So we're not being victimized by it.
Right.
Or we can, again, make the choice to sell portions of it, or just know that once we've worked through it, it now gives us greater range of expression.
That's right. Yeah. And this is a part, you guys, just so you know, I rarely talk about this stuff just because I don't mean not to talk about it, but in actuality, when you've done this kind of work, therapeutic work, psychological work, you kind of forget that you went through it.
Right.
Like I remember, I'm a big believer in, your life story. I just know that my life story pretty much gave me a voice and gave me an occupation, gave me an access to myself so that I can then contribute.
Right.
instead of being victimized by my own life.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I think that's true of all of us. To do that, I had to work with somebody like you.
Right.
You know what I mean? To get healthy enough so I could tell the story.
Right. If I may, I always encourage Bo to tell the story of when Larry Moss looked at him and said, Bo, if your knees could talk, what would they say?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you described is you literally fell to those knees.
Yeah.
And then it took months of actually processing through the pain that you had pushed aside.
Right.
And you know, a lot of people come to see you on stage and they go, well, I want to be like that. How can I be like that? What people don't see is all the work you put in to get there.
Yeah.
And it's all this emotional work
Yeah.
that actually has given you that range of expression.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. And I'm telling you, you know, we say, like Joan just used the word work. It's a lot of work that I did on myself. But that is the greatest work one can do. You know? Is that when you start to develop your own voice and your own story, and you start to find your way and where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, boy, you're pretty much unstoppable, because you can't get knocked off who you are anymore.
That's right. That's right. It's really interesting. A lot of people think that you know, you're just here composed and your stories are kind of contained well inside, and then you tell stuff, and then you know it's like you know who you are, and then you speak.
Yep.
What I have found, and this is exactly what you just said, is once you start speaking, then you know who you are.
That's very true.
That's part of finding your voice. You actually have to give voice to find your voice.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And let's talk about this for a sec. You and I often have this conversation, and I always think of this too, because you know, storytelling to me, telling my own story, has given me optimum health.
Right.
Like, I'm able to run full speed once I have the ability to put a narrative to my life.
Right. Right.
And I wasn't aiming for that. I wasn't aiming for health. I wanted to tell a story because I wanted to have a job.
Right.
Right.
Know? Yes, absolutely.
And then health kind of came in the back door.
Right. That's right.
I wasn't really asking for it.
Right. Right.
But what a little side prize it was.
Absolutely.
Because to be able to run full speed, especially when you're on stage and you're dealing with a lot of elements, and you're dealing with your audience, and you're dealing with, like in this case today, cameras and nerves and pressure.
Yeah.
To be healthy and to be able to be resolute about it, you know, just invaluable work. And so I just remember getting in rehearsals with Larry Moss and trying to tell my story. And I wanted to tell this story night after night after night after night, you know, in New York City and on the big lights. And he told me, you know, he goes, you're not going to be able to do that unless you get resolved about this story and get resolved about the man that you are in your own voice. And until you do, you won't be able to do it night after night after night without just basically puking on the audience.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that I remember going into that kind of work and then coming out the other side and going, wow, I can actually do this. I actually know what my voice is.